myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. It feels alright.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters. This is a pre-recorded program for the Christmas period, and it is a show which I've been asking Malcolm and John to do for the last few weeks, and looking forward to sitting back like you at home and listening to Malcolm's career as an England player. So, John, I will go off camera and hand the reins over to you, sir.
Cheers, my friend. Malcolm MacDonald, 14 caps, 6 goals, which is a fair old average, 1972 to 75. We're very proud that they all happened with Newcastle United, believe it or not. Managers, Malcolm, with England. You started, I believe, with Alf Ramsey, the famous 1966. Alf Ramsey had Joe Mercer fleetingly, and then the infamous Don Revie. That they were your 3 England managers, Malcolm. Starting with Alf, who had picked you for the under 23s, as it was then, wasn't it?
That's right, John. Yeah, my first ever call up was it was when I was at Luton before I joined Newcastle.
Really?
And I was in the shopping precinct in the centre of Luton town, and one afternoon, and all of a sudden, a great hand has clamped down on my shoulder, and I looked, and it was a policeman, and I thought, "Oh my word! Oh,
surely I've tucked up."
Well, I thought, have I walked out of a shop without paying for something? And I said, "Can I help you?" He said, "You need to report to the football club immediately." He said, "They've got important news for you." He said, "So get off there straight away." Well, it wasn't that far from the football ground, the shopping centre, so I ran up there up Kenilworth Road to the offices, and in I went, and they said, "You've had a call up for the under 23s. Somebody got injured." And so off I went. I had to fly to Scotland, and the team were staying out on the west coast, and I got booked into the hotel. It was a big golfing place, of course. I think everything is in Scotland, and it was my first ever opportunity to sort of sit amongst some, all the top players. This was all the top young players, and it was what an experience! It was fabulous. I didn't get on. I was on the bench, but nevertheless, it was a great experience just to be a part of all these terrific young players.
Was that an Alf Ramsey side,
yes,
Malcolm?
Yes, because he managed all the levels.
Yes.
And,
your debut for the full side, Mal, was Wales, wasn't it?
Yes. It was at the end of my first season with Newcastle, and I got a call up, and it sort of seemed that Mick Shannon and I were taking the same path with the same timing, that we had played together in the under 23s, and this was his first call up as well for the full side. And we both played. We were both selected, and I was playing up front with Rodney Marsh, and Mick Summerby, who were both with Manchester City.
Yes.
And I didn't score that game, but we were very much on top throughout. But I did make a couple of goals, one for Rodney, and so we won 3-0. It was very one-way traffic in the game. I played against Mike England, who was the captain of Wales. Yeah, and
Spurs.
Let's put it this way: that he would kick centre forward similarly to how a rugby player kicks the ball. It goes up. And so on the Wednesday night, because this was the home international championships, which was an annual competition. They don't do it now. It was a great competition at the end of the season, and I wish they would bring it back. It was absolutely terrific, where the four home nations are all involved, and we played Wales on the Saturday. On the Tuesday or Wednesday night at Wembley, we played Northern Ireland, and I was in the side again and being marked by a guy who would later be my manager, Terry Neal.
Good gracious, your manager at Arsenal, he bought you from Newcastle, didn't he?
That's right. Yes. And he was marking me that evening, and oh dear me!
Marking you physically, Malcolm.
Well, we were well mocked, I must say, because Northern Ireland scored, went into a 1-0 lead, and we blasted at their goal, and the keeper was saving it left, right, and centre, and we didn't score, and we finished up losing the game. And
was that Pat Jennings in goal? Probably.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't Willie McFall, certainly.
No, it was Pat Jennings, and he was making great save after great save. You know, it's phenomenal.
He did, yes.
Pat, and of course, I later played with Pat again at Arsenal.
At Arsenal, yes.
Terry Neal brought him in from Tottenham. And fabulous goalkeeper, you know, and Willie McFall, bless him, he got very few caps because
six is all he got, Malcolm.
Yeah, six. Yeah, but he must have gone to over 100 games.
Oh yeah, he was on the bench every game, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah,
right. Was that the home internationals? The one that I remember that sticks out, Malcolm, was the one against Scotland up at Hampden when Alan Ball scored and you went on as a sub.
That's right. That was the game on the Saturday.
Yes, there was 138,000 or something in
128,000.
128,000. Yes.
Yeah.
I was actually at the game, Malcolm. For the Chronicle.
It was the biggest crowd I ever played in front of.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And 9/10 of the supporters of Scotland were drunk out of their skulls.
And weren't they antagonized by Alan Ball when he scored? He gave them some Humpty Dumpty.
Yes, but it's the whole thing started as before the game even kicked off. The coach pulled off the main road and was going through a road that had all car parks going left and right off it. And we're heading up towards the stadium. And as we turned into this road, it was lined with Scottish supporters on every side, all with kilts on. And as the bus got in front of them, up went the kilt and they peed all over the bus, which is what they thought of England.
Welcome to Hampden.
So that was just for starters. And Alan Ball was outrageous, my word. What happened? He having scored, we were 1-0 up. There was about 25 minutes to go, and Rodney Marsh did one of his fancy tricks on the ball, and Alf Ramsey, his face just went black as thunder, and he turned to me and he said, "Get yourself ready." And then he turned the other way to Harold Shepherdson, his coach, and he said, "Get that clown off."
He didn't like showboaters, Alf, did he? Didn't like showboaters.
Didn't want showboaters at all.
No.
And particularly in front of 128,000 Scots.
Because ironically, Malcolm, if I had it right, looking at it from the outside, but following England at the time, the Jocks notoriously disliked the English when we were playing each other, but there was only two of the English who really disliked the Jocks, and one was Alan Ball, and the other was Alf Ramsey.
Yes, the two of them, they really had something against the Scots, and I sort of felt at home with a name like Malcolm Ian MacDonald.
I was going to say you should have been playing for them.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's a bloke called England play for Wales. I mean, what about that against
I know. But so
Malcolm, you know, when you went on in that game, mate, when you went on up in Scotland, if I remember rightly, if you'd played orthodox centre forward and you really didn't, and you'll explain that in a minute, you went out wide a lot. But if you played orthodox through the middle centre forward, you would have been up against Bob Moncur.
I was, yeah, and I had a couple of runs against him.
Yes,
but once I was ready to go on, and Rodney Marsh came off, Alf Ramsey, he came out the dugout, he put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, "We're 1-0 up." He said, "Waste as much time as possible." He said, "Keep making runs into the corners and hold it there for as long as you can." And so, okay, that's what I did. We were leading at the time, and so I kept making runs, both to the left and the right corner flags, and there was one time where there was Scotland had a corner, and we were sort of getting fairly close to the last few minutes. Scotland had a corner, and it was swung in. Somebody's headed it down, and it went to the feet of Bobby Moore, and so he's imperiously just taken it out of the penalty area, and he's looking up the England right wing. And so I'm making a run from the centre, and sort of looking to come towards him, and then peel off inside the English half. So I was onside, so that he could just ping it right down the line, and I would be away, and I could run it into the corner. And for all the world, John, he looked as if that's exactly what he was going to do. And there was me, woof. I'm now starting to really accelerate. And all of a sudden, he's gone bang and hit it the other way. And there was Alan Ball, who had gone from the penalty area, and he was sneaking up the left-hand side while all the attention was to me. Yeah. And he's just in acres of space. And he's taken the ball all the way to the corner flag. And of course, Bob Moncur and his fellow defender, they've sort of had to turn from where I was, and they're now heading all the way across the pitch, 70 odd yards. And Bawley has run it all the way into the corner, and he is sat on the ball. If you remember, yeah.
Oh, he was naughty in that game, yes.
And he sat on the ball, and and there is 128,000 drunk Scotsmen who now just want to kill us.
Oh,
anybody
absolutely.
in an England shirt, you're dead and buried. And I started running across, like, Paulie, get up on your feet, for heaven's sake, get up. You know, I want to get out of this place alive. and so up he's got, and the Scots have got possession again, and they've got another corner. Well, pretty much the same happened. And I made a very similar run as Morrow was coming out the penalty area with it once more, and it was on for him just to knock it right down the line, and I'd take it all the way to the corner flag. Bob Moncur's come right across with me, so had the five, and Bob Morrow, he's done it again, and he's hit it, and there was Alan Ball, and he tore up the left wing, well, as quick as he could, Paulie, and he's got to the corner flag, and he's gone to sit down, stood up, gone to sit down, stood up, and he's winding everybody up. And this was Bawley. Oh, he was such a winder upper, and the Scottish crowd, they are screaming at him, and so he's having stood up. He turned to the saltire, the corner flag, which was of course the cross, and he just got hold of the flag on the corner post, and he's wiped his nose. Oh no! We've just all looked at each other, all the England players, and gone, "Oh, for heaven's sake, we are in trouble now."
Oh, I mean,
and a couple of minutes later, the full-time whistle went. We had won 1-0, and Bawley has absolutely insulted 128,000 Scotsmen who happened to be drunk at the same time, and we got into the dressing room. We on the way there, we were being pelted with all sorts, and we got into the dressing room, and they smashed all the glass that was up the top, sort of putting light into the dressing room, and it was that strengthened glass with the wire in it and what have you.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that all of it just came in, and we just sat in the dressing room getting covered in this glass, and we didn't get out the ground until it was about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock that night.
I mean, I remember it the game, Malcolm. It that game. I remember I was up in the press box and we were doing it. There was a football pink in those days, as you know, and I was doing it with that because Bob Moncur was playing on one side, Malcolm MacDonald was with England on the other side. Manna for heaven for the Chronicle.
Yes.
So I'm doing the game, and when Bestie scored, he ran round in celebration, if you remember, with the Winston Churchill two-fingered salute to all sides of the ground, and I'm going, oh no! And
you just said
whistle.
You just said Bestie. Did you mean Bawley?
Sorry, I meant Bawley. Yes, absolutely, Bawley. Yeah, when he scored the goal, little Gingerhead ran round the pitch, two-fingered Winston Churchill salute to all the fans, and on the final whistle, the same again. I mean, I had to dive out of the ground to get down to Glasgow to get the train back to Newcastle. And I got outside the ground, and you can imagine there's 128,000 people coming out.
Yes.
And they were fuming. They'd lost to England, and they'd been wound up by Bawley. And I just kept my mouth shut. I thought, there's no way they're going to hear an English accent.
Yeah, you know. You didn't dare let them know that you were English.
I just kept stung my head down and just kept walking, got out the station, got on the train, and only relaxed when the train pulled out of the Glasgow and started heading south. But Bawley was like that about it. And while
he really didn't give a damn at all.
But Alf was quite confrontational with the Scots as well, wasn't he? Alf Ramsey, you know,
It was something that went back. I never did find out just what it was, but there was something that had sparked all of this off with Alf and Borley and the Scots.
Yes, yeah.
Never
It
knew
was
what it was.
amazing. But I mean, Alf, I know you rated Alf as a manager very, very highly.
Oh, yes.
I know he'd won 66, etc. But your personal dealings with him, and I want you to recall a story you have previously told me, Malcolm, about a team meeting when Muro got distracted while Alf was talking. Can you recall that story for us?
Yeah, I can indeed. Yes, it was. We were playing Italy at Wembley midweek, and we used to stay in a hotel in Hertfordshire, the West Park Lodge, and there was a sort of a guest's room that it could hold a dance. It could hold a party. It could hold sort of a little, a band or whatever. It was without being overbeat. It was still a sizable room, but there was a plinth against the wall on one side, and so Alf, there was a table and chair there, and so he would sit there, and we would all sort of put our seats right in front of this table, and so we were all sort of sat in front of Alf, and off to our left at the end was a massive great window, but it was completely covered by curtains, and the sun was shining very brightly, and where the curtains met, right at the very top, there was the curtains were just slightly parted, and the sun was shining through, and it was like just a very thin shaft of light. Now with Alf,
like a laser.
Well, it was like, yes, and his team talks took exactly 2 hours. Never 1:59, never 2:01, always spot on 2 hours. And he was so thorough. He would tell you who the goalkeeper was, tell you everything about his game, strengths, weaknesses, his physical attributes, everything. And so without ever having seen him, you felt almost like he was your brother. You knew him that well by Alf's information. And then he would go right the way across the back line, giving the team out, but exactly what these players could do. Then he would talk, and having gone through the whole side, then he would talk about the back line and how they played, and really give you a lot of information. Very helpful, I have to say, and because he put it over so well. And then he would get onto the midfield before going to the forward line. And it was while he was now giving us all this information about the midfield as a unit, this shaft of sunlight had been coming through the crowd, had been coming through the curtains and right into the crowd of players sat in front of Alf. And this shaft of sunlight was on Bobby Moore's cheek, and he couldn't escape him. We're all sort of fairly tightly grouped, and so he just put up with it. And Alf, he was in the middle of a sentence when all of a sudden, from in the middle of the group, there was a, and everybody just stopped absolutely still, looked around, and there was Moro with this shaft of sunlight on his cheek, fallen asleep. And Alf Ramsey has just absolutely stopped mid-sentence. And he's looked at exactly what the situation was. And he said, Emlyn, would you mind giving Robert a nudge, please? And it was Bobby Moore, with the sun on his face, fallen asleep and started snoring as Alf was giving this team talk. And Moro, he's come to, and he's suddenly realised exactly what the situation is. And he said, Alf, I am so sorry. I really am so sorry. I do apologise. This shaft of sunlight coming in, he said, it was so warming on my face. And, well, he said, I must have just dropped off with it. He said, and I couldn't escape it. He said, we're all sort of tightly sat here. And Alf, listen to him fully. Let him finish. He said, Robert, I know you may have had to have listened to this 107 times before, but would you please, Robert, just listen this one more last time? And we were just left dumbstruck. One more last time.
Is he not going to play again?
He never played again, Moro. Never played again. Was never in an England squad. That was it. That was his last game against Italy at Wembley. Oh, dear me. So, no matter what, just make sure you, in front of Alf, stay awake, whatever you do, and concentrate. And yeah, I mean, that was Moore's last game.
There was the famous story, Mal, before you got into the England squad back in '66, when they won. You know, they won the greatest trophy, and we've never done it since, and all that. And Jeff Hurst, of course, scored a hat-trick, having not been in the side to start with. Jimmy Greaves was.
Jimmy Greaves.
And then in he comes and he gets a hat-trick. In the morning, when they're all leaving after the celebrations at the having won the World Cup, he says he's in the car park, getting in his car, Hursty, and he sees the gaffer come out and he shouts across, goodbye, gaffer. See you next November or whenever the next international was. And Alf just shouted back, if selected. He just got a hat-trick to win the World Cup.
That was Alf. If
selected.
Yes.
See you in November, if selected.
Yeah, John. We would return to Heathrow Airport from away trips. And we always went away on a 3-game tour at the end of a season after the home internationals. And one time we'd come back from Eastern Europe, and I've come down the flight of steps from the plane, and Alf was stood at the bottom, and he was shaking hands with each person as they came down. And I got down to the bottom, and he shook me by the hand. He said, thank you for all you've done on this trip. He said, and I hope that maybe we might meet again. He never gave you an indication as to what his plans were.
You could never take it for granted.
No, not ever.
Well, I mean,
he was a great fella, Alf. Really was. A great football knowledge. What a football brain he had.
I mean, the huge thing that he had the guts to do was not bring Jimmy Greaves back during the World Cup.
Yes.
And going with Hurst, who then justified everything with a hat-trick in the final, of course.
Sure.
But the easy thing would have been just to put, because Jimmy Greaves is still a legend when it comes to scoring goals, and the easy thing would have been to put him back in the England team. But he went with Hurst, and he got a hat-trick. And when Alf went, and I guess you must have been sad, Malcolm, because you rated him so highly as a manager.
Well, John, I was there for his last game, and it was we were away to Portugal over in Lisbon, at the at the proper Stadium of Light.
Yes,
Stadio
indeed. The
Blue.
original Stadium of Light.
Yes. He had left out of the squad a whole host of the older, more senior internationals, some who had been in the 66 squad who were still playing, and others that had played in the 74 Euros. And of the original 66 squad, the only two that remained were who had been the real youngsters of the England side, and that was Alan Ball and Martin Peters.
Yes.
And so he had the two of them playing midfield, and he had a really young back four. It was like Colin Todd, Jeff Blockley from.
I remember him.
Yeah, Jeff
was
Blockley.
He Coventry or somewhere? Coventry or somewhere, was he? Blockley?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And it was all youngsters in the back line. Peter Shilton was in goal, who I played in the under-23s with.
Yes.
And then in midfield, it was another couple of youngsters joining Martin Peters and Alan Ball. And then up front was myself and Mick Shannon. And of that whole side, believe it or not, John, I was the third most experienced player.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. It really was. And I had played very few games at that stage.
Yes.
And anyway, so out we went. And there was Trevor Brooking there. Kevin Keegan was in the side. And the Portuguese, they don't mess about. They're hard, they're rough, they're tough, but by heavens, they can play as well. And so it was a right old game, and we got on top, very much on top, and the keeper was incredible that night, and he just seemed to be stopping absolutely everything. I brought about 3 unbelievable saves out of him, and he stopped me from getting a hat-trick, for heaven's sake, with unbelievable saves. We could have won 10 without any exaggeration of any kind. And Trevor Brooking could have had a couple. Mick Shannon could have had a couple. Kevin Keegan a couple as well. And this keeper, he was just absolutely keeping everything out. And it finished 0-0 at the end. But the football we had played was fabulous. And we were all so confident that from that game of youngsters that we could really go on and make one hell of a side. And we got back to England and they sacked Alf. Yeah. And here was, and he had sort of started off this new era. And you think, oh, come on, he's won the World Cup for heaven's sake. And now he's putting his next team together, full of youngsters, but, fabulously skilled. Alan Hudson was in there as well. And
you temporarily got Joe Mercer as caretaker for England.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, he was at Man City, of course.
Yes, he won the title up here with Man City at
Newcastle
before your time, Malcolm.
Yeah, that's right.
With Summerby and Lee and all those that won 4-3 at Newcastle, and Mercer was manager.
But he had a really bad back, and he was quite crippled with it, and he was in the most horrendous pain. So he was very limited as to what he could do. And it was obvious that he was only going to be able to do it very short term. and so he left, and Don Revie came in.
Yeah, the famous thing I remember of Mercer's fleeting term as caretaker England manager, and you can recall this and expand on it for me, is when you went on tour, you went to Yugoslavia and Belgrade airport. Kevin Keegan was famously involved in a bit of a fracas, etc., etc. Can you fill us in on the background to that, Malcolm?
Well, yeah, that trip, it started off with us in Bulgaria, and we were flying. When the communist countries, they made life so difficult for you, seriously difficult. They wouldn't help in any way at all. They just kept putting barriers always in the way. And one of those barriers was that the British Airways couldn't fly into Bulgaria, nor Russia, nor Yugoslavia. Russia wasn't allowing it. And so we were forced to go by Bulgarian Airlines. And they would fly us from London into Sofia, and then from there the plane would return, and it would fly us from Sofia to Moscow, and then 4 days later it would fly us then to Belgrade. And it was very uncomfortable, not so much the seating that I'm talking about, but just the atmosphere. It really was quite uncomfortable. Plus the way things were in the airports, that we arrived in Moscow, and we were just kept waiting for about 8 hours, and we could tell that they do it purposely. They knew exactly who we were, and they did it on purpose. We went from Moscow then to
Belgrade.
To Belgrade. Now, we were always stuck in our rooms. The only place that we went to was somewhere to train in the mornings, and then on to the game on match day. And we sort of went out in the mornings, or rather in the afternoons after training, and we would do a bit of sightseeing. I remember going with some lads to Red Square, quite incredible. Saw the changing of the guards, and it was incredible to witness. But so we played there and got a good result, and then we flew the next morning, very early next morning. We flew then to Belgrade. On arrival in Belgrade, there was a real hullabaloo going on, and we couldn't quite tell because it was sort of in other languages. And we got to the carousel for the luggage, which
to pick up your luggage after the plane arrived. Yeah.
And it was just motionless, and we were stood waiting and waiting and waiting. Which, as I said, it was typical over there. And Kevin Keegan, he had slept on the plane, and then having been woken up so that we could get off the plane and get into the airport. So he's just got on the carousel and gone to sleep. He's laid down and gone to sleep.
Sat on it or lay on it?
Yeah, because it wasn't moving, and it didn't look as if it was going to move for a very long time. And the strange thing I had noticed was that behind the carousel and all barriers, there was a wooden hut that you would see sort of out in the countryside, but it was inside this building, and it was the it was the office of the airport police, and three of the guys came out fully armed, and two of them just grabbed hold of Kevin Keegan, and the third just pointed a machine gun at all of us, and we just sort of froze, and they carted Kevin off to that hut, and in they went, the door shut, and we could hear punches being rained down on Kevin, and he was screaming his head off, and quite rightly so. They were belting him that much, and we turned round to the FA officials that were travelling with us, and they had all scarpered. They got out the way, and so we said, right, what are we doing? Okay, so over the carousels and let's get to the place and get Kevin out. So we stood up on the carousel to go over, and out came a couple of policemen, machine guns again, pointing in our direction, which sort of stopped us immediately. And the beating of Kevin continued. And in the end, Kevin never came out of there whilst we were in the airport, and we were persuaded to get on the bus and get to the hotel, and contact would be made with the British Embassy so that to get this ridiculous situation put to an end. And so, oh dear me, we got now to sort of early afternoon, and the ambassador to Belgrade, he came over to the hotel, and he spoke sort of in very political and diplomatic terms, and said, you know, we have to be very, very careful how we treat this incident. And we're saying they are beating up one of our teammates. We're due to play the Yugoslavs in 3 days' time, and they are beating up. So how many of us are still going to be fit by the time the match comes around? Now, come on, we've got to get this over and done with. Yes, but we've got to take it slowly. We are talking with the Yugoslavs and their foreign office, and so it got to about 8 o'clock at night, and we're just wanting to get to that airport and get Kevin out, and so all of a sudden, in the evening, a car arrived, and out got Kevin, and he was bruised and cut, and it was obvious that he'd been bleeding, and he was in a right mess. And so we got to the hotel, and the ambassador was still there, and we had said on the bus. We'd said on the earlier on that if Kevin has actually been hurt, there is no way that we can play a game against Yugoslavia. That let's just get on a plane and fly out of here. You know, it's been an attack on our player, for heaven's sake. So. The ambassador, he came, and he persuaded us that what we had to do was play. He said, and he gave us all sorts of reasons why. And so in the end, Kevin, he said, right, I want to play. And we said, "You're not in a fit state to play." He said, "I want to play." And in all due fairness, he played well that night. He really did play well. So well done to him on that.
I think it was 2-2 when he actually scored.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Good for him. You know, that was sort of, you know, a footballer's way of sticking two fingers up, stick the ball in the net, and and so we flew out the next day, but this time British Airways came out and flew us back. There was none of this Bulgarian nonsense.
If we can fast forward to Revie, and we have talked about it on a previous podcast, obviously, Revie's attitude towards you, and you know, how you wouldn't be in the squad and you were picked by the media and the fans, etc., etc. But we've got to revisit it, because the big thing was that you scored your first England goal, and against West Germany, no less. West Germany, as it was called then, who were the world champions. I think this was the first game after becoming
yes, it
world
was.
champions.
Yeah,
and you scored 2-0, I think it was, and you got the second goal.
I got the second goal. Yeah.
Was it a back post header, Malcolm?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was a cross from Alan Ball.
Right.
But I've been ignored by Revie for his first three games. He hadn't brought me into any of his squads, and yet I was clearly the leading goal scorer in the country. And so for this fourth game, he did call me up, and everybody used to get to the hotel for sort of tea time on the Sunday afternoon, and so in I went, checked in at reception, and I was told that Don Revie was through in a lounge along a particular corridor. So I walked down to the end, and I went into the lounge, and Don Revie had this big entourage all around him, you know, and I said, Malcolm McDonald reporting. I said, no injuries from the game yesterday. And me having said that, he just looked up and he said, I don't want you here. As far as I'm concerned, he said, you've been foisted upon me by the press. He said, and you're not my choice. And so he said, if you don't score on Wednesday night, I'll never pick you again. And it so happened that we were playing the West Germans, who were, this was their first game as
best side in the world.
Yeah, as defending world champions. So you know me long enough, John. I think I'm a guy that always seeks to look on the positive side of life, and I was rather shocked by this. And he never used my name. Not ever did he once call me by name. I was sort of, oi, you, and so I thought, well, at least there's a positive side to this, and that was that I knew I was playing. That everybody else was hanging on the team being announced, but he had actually just told me right from the word go that I was in the team and that I was starting. And so I thought, right, well, I can get myself mentally prepared. I know what the job in hand is, and I was able to sort of work on the finishing in training and what have you. And Peter Shilton was a great partner for me. Great partner. We used to do 2-3 hours of me finishing, him goalkeeping, and he was the hardest working player I've ever met. He really was, and so off we'd gone to Wembley, and Don Revie sort of went round wishing everybody good luck and just walked past me, ignored me, never said a word, and out we went for the game. And it was about midway through the first half, and Colin Bell just got onto the ball about 14, 15 yards out, and hit a low shot inside a post, made it 1-0. And we'd been playing really well up to then, and we were stretching the Germans like mad, and we got better and better and better as that first half progressed to half time. And we came out in the second half and we were even better. And we were really dominating, controlling the game. And it got to about 15 minutes from the end. And Mick Shannon was fouled on the inside right point of the penalty area, just outside of that point. And so he'd gone flat on the ground. And as he was sort of getting to his knees, Alan Ball made an overlap round him wide. And Mick just nudged the ball with his knee into the path of Bawley, who just hit it first time right the way across to the far post. And it evaded Sepp Meyer, the goalkeeper. It came over Beckenbauer, Bertie, even over Bertie Votes. And then I came at the far post. Thank you very much. Got my head to it and knocked it down into the net. And that made it 2-0. That was the final score. And we really had outplayed Germany. And it was a great performance to be a part of. It really was. And so we were in the dressing room, and we're all getting our kit off, and Don Revie walks in, and he goes across to the far corner from me, and he shakes hand with Peter Shilton. Well played, Peter. And then to Colin Todd, well played, Colin. To David Nish, well played, David. And then to the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7. He got to Mick Shannon next to me, and he said, well played, Mick. And he's walked past me, shook hands with the 10, then the 11, and walked out the dressing room. And Alan Ball, he said, yeah, I saw that. He said, no, he didn't. He said, I saw that.
Was Cyprus the next game, Malcolm?
Yes. Albeit it was the following year.
Yeah, there was a time gap.
Yeah, the German game was in 74, and it was sort of late October, early November, and there wasn't a game then until the following, I think it was March or April maybe.
It was a European qualifier, I think.
It was.
Malcolm.
Yes,
it was a competitive game, a qualifier. And I believe the same happened again when you reported, of course, for Cyprus.
It did,
You had to be picked because you scored.
Yes. Yes. Well, I really wasn't sure whether I would be picked, but there was no reason to drop me.
Yeah.
And so when I arrived, and I said no injuries from the game yesterday, Revie said the same applies as last time. If you don't score, I'll never pick you again. And
you must have took that to heart.
Well, yeah, and I told Bawley, and he said that is absolutely out of order. How dare he? And he sort of he told some of the lads, Alan Hudson, Mick Shannon, and he said, right, come on, we've got to give this fella as much help as we can. He's been well put upon by Revie. And so out we went, and Alan Hudson knocked a great free kick in from the left wing. And Dave Watson, he was on it all day long. And I actually pushed him out the way and headed it into the corner.
That's what centre forwards should do
by that time.
That's what centre forwards should do, Malcolm.
Yeah, well, oh, well, I didn't want to see it go over the bar. Typical centre halves header. So, and then Kevin Key, Mick Shannon did a little bit of magic on the left, and pulled a cross back, and I got my left foot to it, volleyed it into the far corner, and Ballie's come running up, and he's gone, right, that's your second goal. He said, come on, you know, keep going, and so that went to half time, 2-0. We were winning, and then we came out for the second half, and he had been geeing us up, and me in particular, and others to make me goals, and so Kevin Keegan did a little bit of magic on the dead ball line and pulled it back, and I volleyed it. I ducked and I headed it into the net, and Ballie's come running up. He said, "That's your first hat trick." He said, "Now you go for your second." Because before the game, he had said to the other guys, he said, "What is the goal scoring record for England?" And nobody knew. He said, Willie Hall in Northern Ireland back in 1938, he scored 5 at Windsor Park. He said, and this guy is going to beat that record tonight. We're going to make him 6, us. And they, all right, okay, we're up for it. So there was a substitution made at us 3-0 up, and Dave Thomas, County Durham lad, who was playing for QPR at the time, he came on. I forget now who it was that went off, but he came on, terrific crosser of the ball, and Alan Ball knew it, so he's positioned himself sort of inside, so that he could just keep slotting the ball just behind the fullback for Dave Thomas to run onto. And Dave, he smacked a great cross in, and I got right up, out jumped the centre half, and headed it into the far corner. And Ballie's come running up, and he's gone, "That's your fourth." He said, "You've just got 2 more to go to get the record." And Dave Thomas knocked another cross in, and I dived onto that one, headed it in, and Ballie's gone up. He said, "Right, you've equalled the record. You've equalled it." He said, "You've created a record at Wembley." He said, "Now you go for the out, for the full, full record." And so, as it so happens, I did score again, but it was disallowed. Somebody else was offside, and then the final whistle went, and we won 5-0. Nobody else had scored that night, nobody at all. And so it was just me. I've scored 5 goals, and I'm shaking hands with the Cypriots. We in the area that they had been defending in the second half, which was at the opposite end of the ground to the tunnel. Well, up above the tunnel was it was only fairly small by comparison to what they do now. But there was an electronic scoreboard that had just kept the order of goals going in, and so I noticed between handshakes that it went blank, and excuse me, and I continued shaking hands, and then all of a sudden, the board relit, but this time the wording had been changed, and this time it said, "Congratulations, Supermac 5, England 0." Sorry, Cyprus 0.
Yeah,
Cyprus 0. And I looked at it and I thought, oh wow, there it is in writing. And I thought, that's my boyhood dream come true. And how many of us have had that boyhood dream of being at Wembley, scoring for England, And there it was. That was confirming it had all come true for me on that one night. Then reality struck. And I looked across and I thought, where are you, you bastard? Where are you? And there he was in his trench coat, going round the far corner flag on his way to the tunnel at the other end of the ground. And I'm screaming down the empty pitch, pointing at the scoreboard. I'm saying, read that and weep, you bastard. Read that and weep. And we got into the dressing room some while later. Revie came in. Well played, Peter. Well played, Colin. And he was shaking hands, saying, well played to everybody. Got to Mick Shannon, shook his hand. Well done. Well played, Mick. Walked past me, never said a word, shook hands with a 10 and the 11, disappeared out the dressing room. And that was my last game for England at Wembley.
I was going to say, you didn't play again, Malcolm, did you?
No.
I tell you what.
6 goals in 2 games at Wembley, and I never played at Wembley again for England.
There's 2 ways of looking at that. One is it's an absolute disgrace, and the other way is, pal, you couldn't have topped that. So go out on an encore of beating the world champions and then setting the record for Wembley, which is
sure.
And I was at that game as I was at the Bob Moncur game in Scotland, and I think I enjoyed it almost as much as you. Not quite, but almost as much as you.
Yes, but
happy days, happy memories.
It certainly, they were happy days, except when I was in the company of Revie.
Yeah, well, yes, but if you had to score against the world champions and 5 in a single match wasn't a bad consolation, mate. And then
it's still a record now to this day.
Correct.
But when I was managing Fulham back in the 80s, England were playing over in Spain, and Gary Lineker was the centre forward, and I had got home after a day's work at Fulham Football Club, and my intention was to wallpaper the dining room, and we got this lovely striped paper, perfect for a dining room, and of course the game wasn't shown live on television back then. In those days, it was highlights later in the evening, and so I took the radio into the dining room with me, and my bucket of paste, and I started preparing the wallpaper, and I'm listening to England playing over in Spain, and I'm started to hang the wallpaper, and so Gary Lineker scored 1, and I continued wallpapering. He scored 2, and I continued wallpapering, and then he scored a 3rd, got his hat trick. I thought, oh dear me, and this was all in the first half. I think half time came. And out they came for the second half, and oh dear, I was starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable at this stage. And so he scored a 4th. And now I am really nervous, really, really nervous. And I'm still hanging the wallpaper, but I'm listening so intently to how this game is going, and hoping that England don't get into the Spanish penalty area. And finally, the game ended. Gary Lineker scored 4 in a 4-0 victory over Spain. And, my record was still intact. And I'd finished my wallpapering, and off I went to another room. And I thought the next morning, I'll go in and just see how my wallpapering is. And I've gone in, and all the stripes are like that.
Because you weren't concentrating.
It got progressively worse as you went round the dining room.
I remember not so long ago, the same sort of thing. It wasn't so personalised with me, but because of our friendship, was the same sort of thing. Steve will probably remember. Forget the game, it doesn't matter. But Harry Kane scored 4 for England. I think they were playing one of the minnows, and he scored 4 for England. And I'm thinking, Supermac's record's not going to go. We can't have somebody out of London, and you're out of London. Can't have somebody out of London taking the Newcastle United record, and it didn't. But happy days, and thanks for sharing them again, Malcolm. I enjoyed them then, and I enjoy them now. Thanks very much indeed.
All right, well, my pleasure indeed, John, and certainly it was a pleasure to me back then. But they still continue to give me pleasure. They really do, all those goals.
Great stuff. Great memories. Thanks, John. Thanks, Malcolm. And thanks, everybody in the chat. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care now. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
A big thanks to all our sponsors. First off, Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Eden Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. And thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces. They are handmade in Cumbria, and you can find more information out on their website, mrvickies.co.uk. And if you want to order any, email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Big thanks to Blowhole Brewery, a new beer made on Tyneside. The cans are all designed in the colours of Newcastle United strips from days gone by. Black and white there, the purple and blue, and the good old-fashioned blue from the entertainers' days. But get more information on the Blowhole Brewery range, such as Geordie Juice, from blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things and video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who do our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the show, then all you need to do is click the subscribe button below. You can also hit the thumb up, which does us a favor by liking the video, and click share to your social media, such as Twitter and Facebook. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify and the rest. And if you want to contribute to the show, use the QR code. It takes you straight to the membership pack, and you can join the channel. What do you get for your membership pack? You get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. You can also make a donation by hitting the $ in the chat tonight. We also give you something for free if you subscribe to the show. To get your car sticker, email John at NUFCmatters.com and he will post you one out. We also support the food bank on this show. And if you want to make a virtual donation to the food bank, then go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. On our website, we've got lots of t-shirts, cups, pens, you name it, memorabilia, if you want to buy it and support the show. For Christmas, we have the Bruno Christmas jumper, which is selling rather well. And we'll have the bobble hats, Play Like Almiron, Bruno's Magic, and Bruno's 39 and Joe Linton's J7. Get yourself to nufcmatters.com to buy them today. If you want to buy people a ticket for one of our events next year, we've got an evening with Steve Howie, which is Friday the 24th of February at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £50 from nufcmatters.com or newcastlelegends.com. And you can also buy them on voucher before Christmas. Get somebody a bargain and a nice Christmas present. Peter Beardsley is on the 10th of February at St. Dom's Catholic Club in Newcastle. Tickets available direct from the venue. And for this one, Friday the 2nd of June next year at the Grand Hotel in Gosforth, 6:30 start. An evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford. To book tickets, contact Natalie at heelandtour.org.uk or visit their website, heelandtour.org.uk/events. If you're looking for a Christmas present and people like a book, then get yourself NME from the Bender Squad to the Gremlins, or the last remaining copies of Black or White, No Grey Areas, Lee Clark's autobiography, and you can get them from www.badboysbooks.net.